Hi, I'm Judy.
And I'm Tamara.
Welcome to Balance Not Boring, the wellness podcast that's not about extremes or perfection.
Just real conversations on balancing your mind, body, and soul in our bustling city of Dubai.
So grab your tea and get comfy with us.
Oh, and fair warning, you will learn something.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Balance Not Boring. Today's episode shines a light on something too often kept in the dark, the mental and emotional load that women carry. Between careers, family, fertility, hormones, and trauma, many women are quietly struggling, especially in cultures where seeking help can still be a taboo. We're joined by the incredible Aisling Prendergast, a licensed psychotherapist with deep expertise in women's and mental health. Trained in Ireland and the UK, Aisling has worked across the NHS and private sectors and now practices in the Middle East at the Free Spirit Collective. Her work spans everything from infertility, IVF, and perinatal care to grief, trauma, and life transitions. Outside the clinics, she's a mom of 2 boys, a psychology nerd, and always on the hunt for the best breakfast spot. Aisling, we're so grateful to have you here as we're going to talk about the unspoken weight, a conversation on women's mental wellness and mental health. So thank you for being here. We're so excited.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so thrilled.
We're just going to get started on some general questions. We just wanted to know what drew you into the world of psychology and what mode of therapy you study and practice now.
Well, initially, I never thought about being a psychologist. It wasn't really something I wanted to do. When I was really tiny, I thought I wanted to be a nurse. I really liked the outfits. I thought it seemed like a nice, caring job. But then as I got older and, with very kind of little direction, really, I guess, I thought I probably wanted a corporate job. So again, I could look the part of different things. And I sort of fell into social work initially, actually. So that was my undergrad. I thought that's what I wanted to progress into. But then I found my master's course in addiction psychology, which was how I started out. And really just, I guess, fell in love and became really obsessed with the idea primarily of process addictions. So more kind of behavioral addictions like eating disorders, self-harm. And it all just kind of spiraled from there then, thinking about different trainings, different specialisms, and arrived at the point of now focusing, I guess, primarily around perinatal mental health and women's mental health in general.
So you're at the right place, basically, with us. As you were talking about earlier, because we want to focus a lot on women's mental health through different life stages, whether they are still single, thriving, or if they're getting married and thinking about having a family, pregnant, postpartum, if at the workplace, burnout. I mean, it's all interchangeable. But I think that women, we don't have enough opportunities to highlight what we go through and speak about it openly. A lot of the time we feel like we need to keep things in, and that's just normalized, right?
Absolutely.
In society.
Yeah.
So I think with your experience, and we can get some tools from you on how we can start to feel more comfortable in our own skin, going through these life changes and feeling, good about okay, maybe I'm going through a tough time now, but it's only a phase. I can get through it.
You've worked through a lot of trauma work is a really intense setting. Mm-hmm. So what have those experiences taught you about how trauma lives in the body and in the mind? How does that manifest internally and externally?
I guess what I've seen, so my career kind of started out at a bit of a crescendo. So I've worked in kind of higher intensity services initially in my career. So specifically, again, with women, it's always with women, with personality disorders, namely emotionally unstable personality disorder. So a big kind of presentation of that is self-harming behavior and a lot of kind of self-sabotaging behavior. But the common theme amongst an individual really who is diagnosed with an emotionally unstable personality disorder is trauma. So whether that's emotional trauma, physical trauma, other forms of abuse in their lives, and how that has impacted, I guess, their attachment style and how they perceive themselves, the world around them, but also people interpersonally. It hugely impacts their trust in the world and their trust in relationship and in relationships, and how that's kind of spiraled into their lives in general. And I guess then as I moved through my career, I kind of down kind of stepped into seeing people who also have an attachment trauma, but how it presents a little bit differently. So I would say that for me, trauma really kind of stems from earlier life a lot of the time, and how it impacts your attachment in the world, but with yourself and with others too. And I do think that really does stay in our whole psyches, really, and how we kind of perceive the world around us.
So does trauma then start in the womb?
It can do. It can. I think, I'm very mindful of kind of saying that to women in particular, because I think women have so much that they carry when they're carrying a baby already. But there is this heightened fear of, oh my goodness, if I'm stressed at all, am I going to damage my baby? Am I going to impact their mental health? Am I going to impact their brains? It really depends on the level of trauma that a woman goes through when they're pregnant. So of course there's going to be life stressors when you're pregnant, but for trauma to impact a baby, it would need to be quite severe and enduring trauma. So for example, women who are pregnant in the middle of Gaza, that's going to be a pretty impactful level of trauma that baby is going to be enduring, and how it is going to impact their whole nervous system. Really, they're not going to be able to come out speaking about that. But we know that even the fourth trimester is going to be filled with trauma. The first years of their lives are going to be filled with trauma. We hope that can be repaired, later in life. But it's that sort of trauma that would really impact a baby's mental health, really.
And do you think it's smart for kids to look at, like, we always think of therapy for adults.
Yeah.
When is it suitable for kids to start a therapy journey?
That's a really good question. And I guess it's going to vary case by case, really, depending on the kind of life stressors that a child has gone through already, and also what are the presenting symptoms that we're seeing with a child. So, for example, I've done a lot of studying around kind of infant mental health, namely babies, and we're not sitting down with babies doing talking therapy, but what we are doing is looking at maternal mental health at that point, because maternal mental health is going to be the biggest indicator for infant mental health. If, unfortunately, a child has lost a caregiver or a parent, or have endured significant trauma, of course we would want them to start therapy as much as possible, and really try to support them to think about, okay, you're carrying a really heavy backpack on your back. How can we take some of those things out and look at them and help you to think about it a little bit more? But if a child is not displaying any, big kind of indicators where they're really struggling to emotionally regulate, or they're really shut down, then usually parents can have those conversations with children.
Just in terms of that, like in terms of starting therapy and when it's the smart time to, why do you think in this region there has been typically more of a stigma around therapy versus the West? Typically, you'll see people, maybe even if they go to therapy, not talk about it.
Again, it's a bit of a tough question, because I would imagine that there's different variables for everybody. But the Middle East reminds me a lot of Ireland, where I grew up, actually. And I guess a lot of the collective thinking is around, survival, really, and having to survive, having gone through really difficult times in the past, whether it's countries like Lebanon, or obviously Gaza, and even in this region as well. There's a lot of shame in sharing problems, and in not kind of keeping up appearances in a way that our lives are perfect, they have to be perfect. We've come from this war-torn country to this. We now need to be grateful for what we have and not focus on the negatives. And it's shameful to even think about that level of vulnerability. I think also previous generations didn't have the space and time and scope to even consider their emotional needs. Now, we're not kind of, thankfully, in our day-to-day lives, we're not looking for food, we're not looking for shelter. Now we have the time to process, and it's not just our trauma, it's layers of generational trauma as well that we're also holding.
What I find interesting is that generally, I don't know if you would agree with your parents, like my parents, they hold space, of course, when I'm in a bad mood or I want to vent or I need to talk to them, but generally they don't see every little thing as a huge deal the way I feel like generally millennials and Gen Z do. And it's probably based on their upbringing.
There's no emotions, I guess, for our parents are valid, of course. My father's a doctor, so he knows, like, he studied a little bit about mental health. So he's very accepting of all that. But again, to an extent. So for them, it's survival of the fittest. I mean, like you should be absolutely grateful that we're out of a certain place and we have what we have now. So it's a bit, I think there's a bit of a gap between previous generation and us. And I guess the word that's being tossed around a lot is anxiety. While it's very valid.
Yeah.
It's just being lost in translation between our parents and us.
Yeah.
And there's no sort of transition as to what are you feeling. And I always wonder have our parents gone through an anxious period in their life?
Yeah.
So I start to look back and think, I'm like, oh, probably.
But it's also the way they were raised, because like I know my mom is one of 6, my dad is one of 5, and generally there were more siblings. Like the number of people per household was higher on average. So I don't think that the parents had the time for each kid to sit and look at each person's feelings. And second of all, the siblings raised each other. That was the norm. So I think it's just generational how we are now, like having 1 to 2 kids. We have more time to focus on the kid as well.
And I guess we don't have the kind of space and downtime that previous generations had too. Although, you know, of course, there was really, really tough times, you know, in people's pasts. But, you know, if somebody was living quite a safe life, they went to work at 9, they came home at 5, you know, the door closed, that was it. Work was done. There was no social media. There was no comparisons. There was nothing else to look at, where our generation is constantly on, you know, before we go to bed at night, we're checking emails. When we wake up in the morning, we're checking emails. I mean, the level of kind of hypervigilance is higher in other ways, you know, in our day-to-day lives. Very different from previous generations, but it's still there.
It's a great segue actually to a question I wanted to ask. But seeing as we're so overloaded with stimuli, I guess, around us, and there's this FOMO, fear of missing out, of everything and everyone and every place and country and thing. Do you think that that definitely has a toll on mental health as well, but specifically returning back to women and fertility and infertility, can that affect infertility in some ways, in the sense that women are so under the microscope to be this, do this, say this, wear this?
I think, I mean, I'm not a medical doctor, so I can't say for sure, but I guess my personal opinion is that the pace of life, especially in this region, is phenomenal. I mean, we live in a city of perfectionism. Our city is perfect. It looks perfect. Everything about it is perfect. Most people are here, you know, on some sort of a working visa or with a partner or a spouse that's on a working visa. We're defined by our roles in society here. And, you know, how sustainable is that really, and what are the costs of that? So are women losing out on sleep? Are they burning the candle at both ends? Is their cortisol so much significantly higher than it would have been previously? Are their diets, you know, not kind of the way that the body would want them to be when there's more time to do that? I mean, the kind of norm for women here, I think, is, you know, you join the 5 a.m. club, get up early, do your exercise, come back, get ready for work, look perfect, be at the office before everybody else, get everything done, but don't forget your kids' school shows in the middle of it, and, you know, the costume that was meant to be ready for yesterday, and, you know, all of this balance that you have to hold, and then get home and cook everything from scratch and, you know, be the perfect wife as well.
Is there a way that you can give us like a suggestion on how can we stand up for ourselves and kind of put those boundaries in a sustainable way that's not offensive to someone else, but also it's going to help us recharge?
And I think we're not in control of anyone else's interpretation of our actions. So if we need to put a boundary in place to look after ourselves, that's really important. And I think that's, you know, it's important to kind of think about the hierarchy here. Is, if I put a boundary in place, is it, number one, is it meeting my needs? Is it supporting my relationship with my friend, because actually they need to know that I don't have the capacity for this? And, you know, also, is it maintaining my relationship with me? Am I showing up for myself here really? Because we can only have so many priorities, you know, so many kind of hierarchies. And as women transition through life, so, you know, when we're single, our priorities are very different. When we get married, our priorities change. When we become moms, our priorities change as well. So for me, I kind of have to think about, okay, what's my priority tonight? Is it that I need some time for me, or is it that I really need to be with my children? And that helps me to kind of determine, do I need to put a boundary in place here and say, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to make it tonight, I need to sleep? Or, I'm really sorry, I'm not going to make it tonight. I need some connection time with my children. And I know that the people that I keep in my life, I hope, are going to understand that really, because it's not a rejection of them. It's actually to meet a need for myself, but also to maintain that relationship with them, that I'm not going out resenting the time when actually I need to sleep or I need to be with my children.
What are the tools to keep managing these boundaries, setting them up day by day?
And I think it is, well, first of all, setting the intention, even on a daily basis, like waking up and thinking to yourself, how am I actually feeling today? What is the emotion today? And what is that emotion communicating to me? What is it telling me that I need? What is it motivating me to do? So first of all, you start you start to kind of ask that, and it becomes habitual. In the same way that you wake up and you say to your children or your husband, how are you? Are you okay? Did you sleep okay? Asking yourself that question as well, so that you can kind of acknowledge what's going on. And then also thinking about, what is it that I need today? How can I show up for myself today? And cultivating that relationship with ourselves. That comes back to our attachment wounds as well. How do we perceive ourselves? What is that inner dialogue like in our minds? Is it hypercritical? Is it compassionate? Is it somewhere in the middle? Where do we need to kind of bring it really to get it to be more compassionate? Because we can't give out what we're not putting in.
And what if that conversation in your head is actually like super negative? Because like, if you want to be real with yourself, you might just be like, even though you have blessings and you're lucky to be alive and everything we're seeing on the news is horrific and we just want to be grateful, but you really don't feel that. You don't care to make that mindful time to write out your blessings and feel it and embrace. You're just angry. Like, do you suggest it's okay to let yourself feel that feeling and not try to cover it and self-talk and be like, no, I'm good, I'm positive?
Yeah. Well, then it's invalidation.
Okay.
We have to validate what's there. Once an emotion is there, it's there. We can't get rid of it. We have to create space for it. But it's about thinking about, what is it communicating to me? Is the intensity too high? Probably, if it's at that level. Why is it too high? Probably because we've shut it off for too long. And I think that emotions are like screaming toddlers. If you don't meet their needs, they'll keep screaming. So once the anger is turning into rage, it's because it hasn't felt heard. So acknowledge it and say, okay, I'm listening. What is it that you need? What is it that you're trying to communicate to me? Let me just allow this for now. Actually, I saw an interesting meme or quote, and I can't remember who it was by the other day, and it said something, and I'm not going to get it right, but it said something around anger is actually, the purest expression of self-love, because it's telling you that something has been crossed for you. It's telling you that somebody has betrayed you, you have betrayed you, a boundary has been crossed, a line has been crossed. If you're angry for anybody else, it's because you're protective. So if you're angry for yourself, it's because you're trying to protect yourself as well. Anger is not a bad emotion. It's a useful emotion. Every single emotion is useful. How do we listen to it and help us kind of get it to help us, in a useful way, in a conducive way of what we need to do.
And also, having feelings as a reminder isn't a bad thing. It's actually healthy, but like, it's not the feeling that's bad. It's how you react to it.
It's the intensity. Is the intensity appropriate, or is it disproportionate here? If it's disproportionate, I would say it's probably because we haven't met the need. So let's listen, let's tune in.
Is it different across males and females how emotions are processed in terms of the intensity of an anger, the intensity of sadness?
I think hormonally, definitely, there's a difference in how emotions are kind of experienced in many ways. But I would imagine that many men really struggle with emotions as well, and we just don't hear about it as much. I think, we're all very aware of the stigma around men's mental health as well, and how difficult it can be to feel vulnerable. So I would say if men are feeling that intensity of rage or anger, there's a lot going on underneath that as well. And that in a similar way, it's going to be really helpful for men to give themselves the space to really think about, what is this communicating to me and what do I need? But that's a whole other, I guess, sphere of shame and stigma around talking about feelings.
And how does that then reflect pregnancy or infertility in that case? Like, how do these emotions shift into this struggle to get pregnant or pregnancy throughout?
Well, unprocessed trauma, unprocessed kind of loss or grief or anger or any of these emotions, of course they're going to impact our mental health. It's going to have a huge impact, even kind of on the kind of neurological pathways in our brain. We're not going to be able to kind of experience happiness in the same way. We're not going to be able to kind of have those dopamine and serotonin releases in the same way. So if we're trying to shut off or suppress anger or anxiety as men or women, we don't just shut off one emotion, we shut off all of the emotions. It's like turning off the kind of mains in the waterworks, really. So if that's happening at that sort of level as well, intimacy is a lot more difficult, and infertility is not just, of course, driven by lack of intimacy, but if it's really difficult to even think about being intimate, of course it's going to impact the relationship as well. And then, if either party is struggling around fertility and if checks have been done, then that's going to play a major role on identity and how that impacts your relationship with yourself too, and your self-esteem and your confidence. And it's just a knock-on effect all the time, really.
I think it's so difficult for people, like those kind of facts are true. Like anyone who thinks through it, it's like, okay, if I'm not happy, it's going to be harder to be intimate. It's going to be harder to have chances to actually conceive a healthy pregnancy. But when you know those facts, sometimes it makes it even more stressful, right?
Exactly. And people say things to you like, just relax, just have fun.
Yeah, don't think about it. It will happen.
You know what's so interesting? So just relax, just have fun has just, been part of the narrative prior to pregnancy. And then at one point, I'm just like, you know what? I don't want this anymore. I'm good. I'm okay. Very blessed with a beautiful niece, and my husband has 3 nephews. Super blessed. And I can be a cool aunt. No problem. We're good. And then it happened.
Because you accepted.
So what is it? Is it something chemically inside that's relaxed, or is it? I'm not sure.
Can I take a stab at this? And I want you to tell me with your educated answer. But I've come to learn through the works of like Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden and these guys. Basically, when you're content with what's in front of you in your life and you feel like your glass is full, even if it's not technically full, but you already embrace, like you have what you already want, and you just let go of that kind of like, you know what, I'm content, and if it's meant for me, it will happen. And like, even if it doesn't happen, I'm happy. That's the main point. Then things start to shift. You attract it. But when you operate from a place of lack, like, no, but I want it one day. Like, I'm okay, but no, I'm going to get it no matter what. You're going to still attract like lack because you're still like forcing and fighting something. Do you think there's energy involved there?
I mean, I love that whole sphere
that
of the world. But I guess on a scientific level, who knows? Yeah. But I do think that through acceptance comes change. And whether that's emotionally or energetically, for sure that happens. But so through that acceptance came change. And I'm sure came change in your, in your cortisol levels, in your stress levels, like things that, are not going to be picked up by kind of general medicine. Maybe functional medicine would pick it up, but obviously the baselines are a lot lower. But through that acceptance and that kind of, I guess, self-compassion, something shifted within you and change happened. Change happened on many levels. Probably change happened in your relationship. Change happened in your relationship with yourself. Change literally happened physically for you as well. I would love to say that it's about manifestation and abundance and gratitude. I mean, for sure there's something there on a kind of psychological level where our attention goes, energy flows. Like our bias is we seek what we find. So if we're seeking negativity, if we're seeking scarcity, if we're seeking bad luck or bad things, we're going to see that. But if we seek positivity and abundance and gratitude, we find that too.
On the other side of embracing kind of life changes and positivity, there's another side to the coin, which could be not gratitude, but grief. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, women through all these life stresses might go through something like miscarriage or the infertility and everything. How can somebody hold space for grief without letting it consume them? Like, what's that fine balance of like, how long would you say to somebody in a session, let's say, it's okay to feel your feelings, but like, is there ever a time where you need to get yourself out of it before it gets, unfortunately, like too deep?
And grief is a tricky one. I mean, in many ways, I sort of love the emotion of grief because I think, well, it's not an emotion, first of all, it's a whole kind of umbrella term of a range of different experiences. It's emotions, it's physical, it's cognitive, it's relational, it's lots of different things. But grief will not, come up to you and introduce itself and say, hi, I'm grief, and I'm just going to hang around for a little while. I just have something to tell you, and then I'm going to take off. It actually stays for as long as it needs to, because it's one of the most cathartic experiences we can go through. Actually, we need to feel it to heal it. And I think when you mentioned gratitude, it's really interesting because, as we were just mentioning about, where we put our attentional bias, we're going to kind of focus on things. But there is such a thing as an overextension of gratitude, or the shadow side of gratitude. I should be so grateful.
Toxic positivity.
Exactly. And that can then kind of, almost invalidate the grief that people will feel, whether it's through infertility or it's through the transition into motherhood. And that's something that I would call disenfranchised grief, that it's not grief that's kind of acknowledged by society. Society will tell you all the shoulds of being grateful. Isn't this a blessing? Isn't this wonderful? Look what you do have. Focus on what you do have. But actually, you're allowed to still feel all of those kind of different layers of grief that you have. And processing it is really important. It doesn't mean that it's consuming your day-to-day life, but that you are taking a snippet of time every day or every week or, whenever you need to just acknowledge, this is here. This is a wave that's coming in and coming out, but it's not going to consume me because I'm allowing it. I'm not trying to shut out the door against the flood. Actually, I'm allowing a little bit to come as and when it needs.
Some offices, I know, I read somewhere that they're starting to give miscarriage time off because 1 in 4 women on average experience a miscarriage, unfortunately, and it's part of your body's filtering system half the time. So
I think they give maternity leave.
Oh, really? Yeah. From what I read, it was 5 days. So. No, the one I'm thinking of, this was about a year or so I read it. I remember, I don't know which company or what it was, but I remember reading 5 days given for a miscarriage experience for the woman. And that is great, and it's courteous, and I understand you're giving the woman time to heal physically as well, but that's not enough time. You can't slap a number on okay, when you come on the 6th day, you better be chipper and you better do your presentation. You're gonna be not yourself, and I really want it to be normalized that women are gonna have days they're not gonna feel smiley and nurturing, and females have this pressure that they always need to be stable, but it's not reality.
Yeah, and if you're not stable, you're the neurotic woman, or
emotional,
it's your time of month, or and it probably is. When we're in our luteal phase, things are more difficult. Progesterone is declining, estrogen is fluctuating. It becomes more difficult to regulate our emotions.
Do you think women should be? I mean, in this part of the world, I know it's still quite. I don't want to say taboo because it's becoming a bit better. But do you think women should advocate more for how they're feeling in terms of what they're experiencing throughout the month? And also postpartum as well?
I wish. In fact, that's probably one of my biggest wishes, that, we could normalize actually the hormonal cycles of women and allow some compassion for that. I definitely don't think we're there yet, but what I do think we can start with is acknowledging it to ourselves. Ovulation tracking apps may not be completely accurate, but if we have some idea of when our kind of, cycle is, when our ovulation period is, and then we're kind of slipping down into the luteal phase, if we're even aware of that, we can be more compassionate with ourselves. And husbands need to know. Yes. Husbands need to know. They really need to know. It's not gross
to have a period. I'm just saying it on here.
Absolutely. And saying, look, this is going to be my day. After that, 10 to 14 days, you're going to need to give me some grace. I'll do my best. I'm going to look at my self-care in that time. And then I'm going to be back up for 2 weeks as well. If the whole world if the whole world went through what women went through.
No, they can't.
No, it would be insane. But also postpartum, I do think that that's incredibly important, because now we know that the research is showing, people have said, your 4th trimester, okay, your hormones are going to be fluctuating, and, it's going to be a tricky time. Then it kind of moved on to your 1st year. It's going to be a tricky time, and obviously hormones are fluctuating. But now we know it's at least 2 years by the time that your hormones completely kind of re-regulate in a way. And I would say even longer than that. Like my children are 4 and almost 6. And I think it was when my eldest was maybe 4 or 5 that I felt like, oh, there she is. There's those parts of me again. A new version of me, but some of the other parts of me that have come back to psychologically, emotionally.
Yeah, and you notice it, but no one would really know. But you feel lighter, lifted.
How does that feel like? I'm saying this only because, like, for the pregnant listeners out there, can you go through postpartum before giving birth?
Absolutely. I mean, perinatal mental health is around pregnancy, and that's any time kind of, during pregnancy and any time postpartum. And I think we do not talk enough about, first of all, first trimester mental health and how difficult that is because of hormonally what's happening, but also nobody knows that you're pregnant, again, because of the stigma of miscarriage and loss. So you're dealing with this kind of depression and anxiety privately, really. And then and now we know so much about perinatal anxiety as well. So before giving birth, and so much impacts that journey into fertility, what that's been like, previous kind of blueprints of trauma or grief or loss. All of these things are going to impact how your mental health is in your pregnancy, not just in your postpartum. And of course, it impacts that too.
And how does one navigate that with so much to juggle at that point? You've been dealing with all sorts of emotional, peaks and lows, and then you have a baby, and then you're caring for this beautiful child. But then how do you navigate so many different emotions, navigating, your spouse, because you're still married. He also needs, he has needs and wants. And then you have like a house to run. And then how does one, it's not like, oh, today I'm feeling bad, I'm really stressed at work. It's that times 25,000 other things. How do you compartmentalize?
And I think, first of all, it's having permission to not. And to not be okay. It's okay to not be okay. And there's no shame in not being okay. Actually, it's really important to acknowledge that. You don't have to be fine. You don't have to come out of the hospital, looking groomed and glam, in pictures for Instagram of here I am with my perfect baby and this is all wonderful. Actually, it's really, really, it's so difficult to kind of get to that level, and I think we don't have to. So acknowledging that first and foremost, and people around the mother acknowledging that as well, partners acknowledging that, family acknowledging that, friends acknowledging that this is hard, this is really hard. Yes, you've been carrying this baby for 10 months, it's not 9 months, I always say that. You've been carrying this baby, but you haven't met each other. This is a new relationship, and you haven't met yourself as a mother yet either. So take your time to do that, and really think about, if I'm really struggling with this now, what do I need to set up for myself? Is it therapy? Is it a kind of collective of other moms? Is it baby massage? Like, where is my support system? And thinking about that and acknowledging that it's okay to need support and help. We don't necessarily have the infrastructure here that we would have in other countries where midwives come and visit you at home, and there's that constant kind of back and forth for the fourth trimester. Unless you go and seek that here, it's more difficult. So setting that up initially as well is really important.
How are women able to have 12 kids?
Yeah.
Oh, truly.
Yeah. And it takes a village.
And it really does.
Yeah.
But we're very blessed. Some of us have our families here, but yet we really struggle to have 2.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it because we're dealing with being at work, having to hold that standard? Because a 2-income household is, let's face it, it's necessary now.
Yeah.
And then still being a mom, so like you're projecting this masculine energy at work, and then you're being a nurturing mom at home, and you're like, which world am I in?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the layers of expectation, whether it's societal expectation or it's personal expectation that we have of ourselves. Like, it is that I have 2 children, but I have to feed them perfectly. And if I don't feed them perfectly, and if they have potato waffles and chicken nuggets for dinner, what damage am I doing? And, are they going to get cancer because this is what I saw on Instagram today? And, everyone else's child is eating, I don't know, sweet potato and salmon, and my child just won't eat that. And then we go out and they're having tantrums, but I need to gentle parent. And it's all of these comparisons all the time. It's the noise, and it's the noise, especially postpartum, which I think can be quite tricky.
And I think it's because if it's a new landscape, like for you, like having your first child, it's completely new. You don't even have a benchmark of like, oh, my older child, like I know I'm supposed to do it this way, but I did it my own way and she turned out fine. Like you're just in that like, oh my God, if I don't do every single thing the way I'm supposed to, my child will be like lost in some other country, like in a different place, like your kid will be fine. I think we have to always think about how our grandparents did things, our parents even, like they didn't overthink.
They used their instincts. They trusted themselves.
Like they let the baby sleep for 5 hours for the nap if the baby needed to sleep. For us, God forbid, they sleep a minute over the nap time slot,
Or a wake window.
Yeah, wake window. See, you even know the terms more than me. I forgot about it.
Absolutely. And I guess all of the other parts, the shame around, what if I can't breastfeed? What if I struggle with that? What if I don't like it? Or what if I don't have milk? But yet I hear all these awful things about formula and, the impact that can have on maternal
Formula has lead,
health.
formula and whatever.
Yeah,
it's like never like the breast milk magic that it has.
Yeah.
But that's so much pressure on yourself.
Absolutely. And how to feed a baby is fed is best, because that's what's best for mum's mental health as well. And that's what's going to, keep everybody in a more sane position.
My husband always says, actually, which I appreciate, like the mother is the rock of the family. Her mental state, if she's happy, everyone's happy. And if she's upset, everyone's kind of feeling it and they react. And I honestly will say, even when I grew up, I remember that there's something about the woman, the mom, I don't know what it is, if I can pinpoint, but it's so important. Like we were talking on our last episode, like if your cup isn't filled as a mom, or even just a woman in the family, I don't think you can pour into others.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
like it is okay to be selfish and put on the oxygen mask first, like you said, because you need to be able to help others if you're okay.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the matriarch, it holds a lot of pressure, doesn't it? We take care of everyone's needs.
It's so interesting how when you apply for jobs, you're asked for a resume, you're asked for experience, you're asked where'd you go to school, what did you do, what did you study, what's your experience or not.
Yeah.
But you still have a resume. You still have some sort of information to give your future employer as a baseline as to who you are and might be in the workplace. There's no resume here. Honestly, you're just given this beautiful soul, and it's okay. You'll figure it out.
There's no workbook. There's
no playbook.
I remember taking my first baby home from hospital and being in the car and thinking, who has let me out of the hospital without doing a degree or,
like a training session of base CPR should be taught at the hospital.
Yeah.
Anything,
It's terrifying. It's a huge transition and wonderful at the same time. But the pressure, the expectation that we have of ourselves, of I should feel like a mother the minute the baby comes. And of course we don't. It's new.
Can we discuss, post-pregnancy, how the woman, like how as women, like we go through this big shift physically and emotionally, and now your brain has even shifted its chemistry to accommodate being a mother. Like I read somewhere that the brain's final growth spurt is becoming a mother because it will never be in that kind of state before. So your identity, you feel different. And I even go through this today. I have moments where I'm so grateful and blessed with my kids in front of me laughing, whatever. Other moments where one is pulling one's hair, one is almost getting hit on the corner of the table. I didn't sleep much. I'm like so pissed off. And I picture my old days being free and just like parties and traveling. And so we've all been there. And without feeling guilty, like how can I embrace that, but also embrace my new life and be okay with that?
And again, I guess, the guilt is there for a reason. Guilt is also a very functional emotion. So there's two different strands of grief or guilt, sorry. Is it justified guilt or unjustified guilt? Am I doing anything wrong by being irritated by the noise levels of my children at the moment? Or, am I hurting my children in any way? Am I going against my own values? Okay, if I am, then I can repair the situation. So if I've screamed at my children, I can go to them and say, I'm really sorry, mommy screamed. I'm tired, I didn't sleep enough. But that's a me problem, that's not a you problem. How do you think we can kind of help this situation in the future? Maybe we could keep the noise levels down a little bit, and I know mommy's going to go to bed earlier tonight, so that we take responsibility for that. But if it's unjustified guilt, like I'm not harming anybody, but actually I'm finding this hard, I'm allowed to validate that emotion as well. This is hard. And I'm grateful for my children and I love them dearly, but I need a breather. I need to go out. I need to go to Spinneys to get a packet of chicken for dinner because actually that's self-care at the moment. Or, I need to go and connect with a friend and have a coffee or go to a yoga class.
Or delegate, have your partner take over, like just be honest about it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So on that note, I mean, obviously with women having to deal with so much, like trying to make sure that your kids are okay, your partner's okay, but also are you okay? Like you're saying, we reach burnout quickly. And as women, I mean, what would you say the best way to kind of acknowledge burnout is? And what can you define for the audience? What is burnout? Is it a physical or is it an emotional thing?
It can be both, really. I guess it depends how far and to what extent people are burnt out. But we can be burnt out in many different ways. Burnout, I think there's for a long time been an association that burnout comes from, a really stressful job or burning the candle at both ends or having too much to do. But we can also feel burnt out from like languishing in a way. So if we're not stimulated or we don't feel like we're kind of being productive or we don't feel like there's kind of a sense of purpose to our lives. Burnout, I guess, for women or in motherhood or, women's mental health in particular can be the layers and the different hats and the different roles that we play all the time. How am I the perfect daughter to my aging parents? How am I the perfect friend to my pregnant friend? How am I the perfect mum to my children? How am I the perfect wife to my husband when actually, yes, I know we probably need to go on a date night, but I'm so tired. And the last thing I can think about is, getting ready to go out and getting stuck in downtown traffic and
the kids
absolutely
blow out in their diaper and their school day. That's pretty much what you end up talking about.
Absolutely. So first of all, acknowledging that and saying, you know what, I think I'm having like caregiver burnout, because that's a huge thing actually for women. So what do I kind of need to acknowledge first of all, and how can I manage the expectations of myself, and who do I need to talk to about this? Can I speak to my husband and say, this is where I'm at really, so that he can give you some context on what he's seeing as well and taking that perspective? Is it speaking to a friend? Is it speaking to a therapist? Like, where is your space really to give yourself some grace? Because I would imagine a huge contributing factor to burnout is also perfectionism and that the unrelenting standards that women hold themselves to.
How do you think that women have that capacity to self-reflect in a world with so much noise?
I hope we're getting better at it. I hope that if we can kind of manage our algorithms on Instagram and not look at all the stuff we should be doing and actually start to kind of think about the things around, how am I doing today? Where is my compassion for myself? What is my inner voice saying? Have I acknowledged my needs? And by the way, self-care is not getting your nails done or, taking a shower. Getting your nails done can actually be part of our body image and how that impacts our self-esteem. Taking a shower is a basic need. So that's not self-care either. It really annoys me when people say that.
Yeah.
But when was the last time I actually took a minute for myself? I just went to the beach and sat and looked at the waves. Or when was the last time I took myself for breakfast? Or, I just went to the mall and went shopping because I felt like it. When was the last time I did that?
I saw a meme or on TikTok or something and I reposted it on our account. Basically, someone was like, when you stop cleaning or doing something like really angry because they're in a rush or they're like in survival mode, and when you actively stop and you're like, let me clean like this. And it's your nervous system freaking out. And I think that's like just that small like second of mindfulness can shift your whole perspective.
Absolutely. And what do we do to look after our nervous systems? Do we sage? Do we listen to, a meditation track? Do we listen to a podcast that we enjoy? Do we go to the beach and look at the waves when the weather gets better? Or do we just expect our nervous system to regulate because we need it to? Like, it needs to fall into line with us.
I've been
as
around
well.
so much noise as a mom, and like when we were traveling a few weeks ago and everything, I felt like there was no stillness. The first time I reached my almost mid-30s, I'm like, for me to feel really like meditative is I was sitting on my bed with nothing, no music, no Netflix, nothing. And that was for me what I thought like I would feel at 70,
Yeah.
but I needed that now, like just silence. And I felt wonderful. Like that calms my brain down.
I always wonder, speaking of social media, are there different personalities that, can handle stress and burnout better? Or is it just people masking and not acknowledging it? Because I have people that I know, bless them, they are working 24/7. They have a beautiful family. They look fantastic. And but how? How? I can't even get my nails done because it's not something that I enjoy doing.
Yeah. And I do think, again, possibly that comes back to our blueprints and, to what has happened previously within your nervous system, really. So for some people, like you said, they can take the noise, they can take the chaos, they can take the hectic life, and it's not overstimulating. For somebody else, just the constant kind of pitter patter or banging of
No
children
personal space.
Yeah, that can feel very overstimulating. And it really depends on what happened to you really in your life that activated or didn't activate your nervous system and put you into or didn't put you into a certain sort of survival mechanism. Like, are you in fight? Are you in flight? Are you in, fawn? Are you in freeze? What kind of drives your reactions? Or are you actually just showing up for yourself? And are you engaging in work or in friendships or in other dynamics because they feel good, or because you need to do it to be somebody or to be a certain way or to show up in a certain way to prove something?
I think actually on that note, when you do anything, if you're doing it and not feeling fulfilled, or you don't feel genuine, like I'm helping myself or I'm helping others with what I'm doing, it can drain you, right?
Absolutely.
Like a normal 9 to 5 that you're just wasting away.
Well, it's not sustainable.
No. Like you need to be, I think the moral of this whole episode is really realizing, like, just be mindful in everything, how you're feeling that day, what your job is, what your hobbies are, who you're spending your time with, because their energy drains into your energy.
And it's okay. It's okay to not want to spend time with certain people. Like, everyone, I hope, is kind of inherently good, but it doesn't mean that they're right for us. We don't necessarily just want to kind of date any guy or, go to any doctor.
Just because your friend likes them, for example.
Exactly. So we don't have to just be friends with anybody or, engage in a relationship that isn't working.
So it's about standing up for yourself.
Advocating for what's right for you.
Absolutely.
Setting boundaries, which we're working on.
Our rapid fire, the fun part.
Great.
So we try to keep these like, one sentence if we can try. But obviously, if you have more to say, we won't be mad. But so the first question is, what does strike when the iron is cold mean in psychology? And when is it worth it to open the can of worms and let your feelings out, or not?
I think in therapy, my kind of rule of thumb is we don't dig up the patio if it's not ready to be dug up, or if it doesn't need to be dug up. So if your psyche is starting to push something through and there's thoughts coming, there's dreams coming, there's memories coming, you're ready.
Okay.
The second question is, what's one misconception about women's mental health that you wish would disappear?
I think we mentioned it, maybe that, so many, but one is maybe that women are PMSing, or they're neurotic, or that they have to have it all together, or that they have to be perfect. Absolutely. I wish that we could live in a world where there is space and understanding for the hormonal fluctuations that women experience and the impact on mental health.
Very true. How does one know if you found the right therapist for him or her?
And again, I think it's really important. So it's a bit like dating. Like if you're sitting across from somebody on a date and you feel like, this is a bit boring and actually they don't really get it, it's the same with a therapist. If you feel like, actually, I wouldn't want to spend time with this person outside of this room, it's possibly not the right relationship. And the rapport in therapy is the number one indicator for change from therapy. So if you don't feel like, you kind of like your therapist, or you could even, maybe be friends with your therapist, not that you would be, but if you don't feel like there's that kind of connection, it's not going to be effective. The rapport is the most important thing. And it's important to change if it's not right.
Okay. So you kind of feel a vibe, just like when you meet a new friend. You just know if they're the right fit or not.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is there ever a situation where therapy could be harmful instead of beneficial?
I think if the therapist is, potentially not trained adequately, or is maybe engaging in digging up the patio where it doesn't need to be dug up, I think that those kind of cases can be problematic. But ultimately, if you're with a trained and licensed therapist and you're leading the agenda for the most part, then therapy or just having a processing space in general should be helpful.
What's the most underrated self-care tool? Underrated.
Perhaps just checking in with yourself, asking yourself, how am I really? How am I? What is my feeling?
Got it.
And our last one is, what is your favorite grounding practice?
When the weather is good, my absolute favorite grounding practice is to sit on the beach and watch the waves.
Love that.
I love this. This was so helpful. Dr. Aisling, thank you so much for being here with us today. You shared such wise words, and your presence brings so much comfort and validation for all of us, especially to women who might be listening in silence. How can people find you?
I am based at the Free Spirit Collective on, I actually think it's on Happiness Street.
Oh,
It's
that's so perfect. I never noticed that.
yeah. So just reach out to the clinic, and I'm there. And please don't struggle alone. That would be my number one piece of advice.
That's great.
Thank
Thank you so much for being
much.
with us today. It was super
Thank
helpful for
you.
me and for Judy as well.
Thank you.